Hi there, all you YouTubers out there who are watching at My Life as a Landlord. Thank you so much for joining me today. Today's episode is not the norm. I've been seeing this happen a lot more, and unfortunately, it's probably going to happen even more into the future. I hope you learned something from today, and quite frankly, I hope you never have to watch this one again, but it's here if you need it. Thanks for watching. Well, hello there. Thank you for joining me. I am Dr. Jen. I'm excited for you joining me today to educate yourself on a situation that has been coming up more and more and more with landlords. Today is another Salisbury adventure, and we are going to be discussing a very heavy topic. It's a bit somber, and unfortunately, it's becoming more and more common, sadly becoming increasingly ill, and some tenants become distant from their family members, which ends up falling into landlords that sometimes these tenants pass away in their units. So that's what episode 60. Episode 60 is today when a tenant passes away in the unit as a landlord, as a property manager acting on behalf of the landlord. What is it that you do? Literally, how do you even handle this? What do you do how do you start this? All right. So what we're going to do, so first of all, this can happen to tenants of any age. This is not just folks that are aging. It can be older folks, but it can also be, it can be anyone. A medical emergency can happen at any time. We've got all kinds of citizens that are tenants that have some mental health issues that may end up resulting in their passing away. So tenants of any age can become ill, and worse than that, they can become reclusive. And it's hard for friends, family to know that they're okay or not okay. So let's go there. Let's have this awkward conversation. Let's talk about this. And honestly, I hope you never need to use this one. But if it does, what do you do? What is it that you do? What do you, as the landlord, do when you haven't heard from a tenant in some time? What do you do if you discover that a tenant has passed away in the unit? What if their passing has created a trauma for the family and either the family can't or won't return to the unit at all, leaving it 100% with the landlord? What if their passing has caused a biohazard environment? What about the items in the unit? What about their cars? What about disclosing to the next owners or the next tenants that someone died there? We're going to go through all of these. They're all awkward, but we have to go through this to help educate you if this does happen to you, or maybe to someone that you know. All right, let's get right into it. First, what do you do as the landlord when you haven't heard from a tenant in some time? First of all, how would you even know if you haven't heard from them in a while? Maybe you're not in the local area. Maybe you're not near the property where your rental is. Maybe you haven't received a rent payment, or maybe a neighbor calls you that says, hey, I haven't seen this person in a long time, or their car hasn't moved. Or maybe a family member calls you and says, hey, I haven't been able to get a hold of them, or I talked to this neighbor some way, but somehow you would get a message that something is not right. And it could be any one of those, could be something I didn't even list, but somehow, some way you get noticed, you get communication that something is wrong. Then what? So typically, this has happened to us before. It has not happened where it resulted in someone passing away, thankfully, but we have had emergency calls where neighbors and friends could not get a hold of someone. So typically what I do first is I look back on their lease and I go, who's their emergency contact, friend or family? And I want them to do a wellness check. Or if they're calling me to do a wellness check, can I legally go in? If I believe that something is wrong, I can either post a notice, or I could potentially call the non-emergency line in my area, not calling the emergency line, because at this point it's not an emergency. This is just someone that hasn't been heard from in a while. This is a non-emergency, and you're concerned. What do? You're asking for a wellness check. And I have seen in certain areas where the fire department can come and do a wellness check. Now, that will very likely include you or your property manager opening the door for the wellness check. Okay. But like I said, you can also post notice on the door to open, say we're going to inspect in 24 hours. We're doing a wellness check on you. If you see this notice on your front door, call me or call your family, somebody, reach out. And if they don't call, then what? But the goal is to get into the unit to do a wellness check in one way or another. That might help. What do you do if you've discovered that they passed away in their unit? So if you're doing a wellness check and it does not include emergency services and you see that there is no movement, you're not sure what's going on, that's where I would encourage you to exit the unit, close the door, and call 911. I am not a first aid person. I'm not a nurse. If you will have medical training, then that may change how you approach this situation. But I'm not sure what else to do except now it's an emergency situation. You found the tenant. They're not necessarily responding to you at all. And you need to get emergency services involved. If you have called emergency services and they're doing a wellness check there, like the fire department is coming to check, then they will take over the situation and they'll tell you what's needed. However, it might take them several hours to figure out what's going on. Do they need to do an investigation? Does the coroner need to come out? I don't know. I don't know what the answer is for this certain situations and what the protocol is for your state, territory, province, or your city. They know that, and that's what they're for. So once you call 911, once you have emergency services there, if you're going to stay there to help answer, it might be several hours. I don't know. Maybe even be more than 24 hours if they have to do an investigation, if they think there was foul play, that kind of thing. I honestly don't know how that works, but at some point you will get a call back from someone in emergency services saying that you can have possession of the unit back. Okay. So at that point, then what do you do, right? Now you've got they've removed the tenant's body at this point. What if the person that passed away it's now created a trauma for the family? The family doesn't want to go back. And I'm assuming here in this situation that they're cohabitating. You've got a family and one of the family members has passed away, whether it was tragically, unexpected, whatever it might be traumatic for this family to return to the unit in any way. So here's where I have to encourage you that if you are at all confused, especially if you're actually in this situation and you're listening to this, wanting direction on what to do, here's what I would suggest that you do. Call your lawyer, call your local housing nonprofit society for your state, province, or territory, whoever that is, or your city if you've got one in your city. You could potentially call your sheriff or your local RCMP for my friends in Canada for guidance on what to do. And you can start figuring out what is it that you have to do. The other person that you should probably give a call to is your insurance agent. If this scenario includes something that the insurance policy that you've got as a landlord could help, I don't know. I don't know what your coverage is, but your insurance agent will. They can help guide you. In this situation, family doesn't want to return to the unit, then if you need to empty the unit, then you need to work with the family to put the items that were in the unit in storage, right? They're going to be either moved to another location or they're going to be put in storage, but you can work with the family about that. Now, again, I highly recommend you talk with some folks and figure out if there is not family involved, if you do not have an emergency contact involved, and literally it was someone who passed away completely unexpected, you have no emergency contacts, you have no family or friends for this person, and it's just you, and now emergency services has called you and said, here, you can have the unit back, and now it's just a unit full of their stuff, and likely their car sitting in the parking lot. Then what? Can you deem it to be abandoned? All these items, can all of these items be deemed to be abandoned? Which the answer is very likely yes. Again, talk with your lawyer, your local housing nonprofit society. sheriff, local RCMP, insurance agent. If a bailiff is nearby to you, if that makes sense to you, I would call and talk to a bailiff, because legally there may be different requirements in different areas. When a normal tenant departs and just, abandons items in a unit, there is a process of how to deal with these abandoned items. Sometimes you have to put them in storage. Sometimes you have to give them proper notice and post notice everywhere that the items will be deemed abandoned in so many days. There is a process for abandoned items. And if there's no friends or family involved, that is a valid question of, are these items now deemed abandoned once the tenant has passed away? Okay, so if there is a family involved cohabitating, if there is a family involved there, coordinate movers, figure out what we need to do. And then again, talk to your insurance agent, because there is going to be a cost. There's going to be a cost to the movers. There's going to be a cost to storage if that's what's required to your abandon. But let's talk about if a person has harmed themselves or had a medical issue that has caused a biohazard environment within the unit. That's a little different scenario, because even when emergency services turns back the unit, it's still considered a biohazard environment at this point. So what you need to do, besides talk to your insurance agent, which is a required, I would absolutely recommend that you talk to your insurance agent, but there are contractors in your local area that will remediate the unit, and they will go in and they will take care of all the biohazard material. And basically there's a special process for all of that, this biohazard. So if you are looking for a biohazard contractor that will remediate, then Google remediation contractor in your city or your county or whatever is your regional district, whatever is appropriate. I would bet some contractor in your area does this work. Now, this contractor will be sending you a bill. And this is where you need to make sure you understand where your insurance agent is involved with coverages. And if there is tenants that are remaining in the family that, or, roommates, whatever, you need to make sure that tenant insurance, if that is included, because the remediation contractor, they're not going to do it for free. You have to pay them. And this was not expected, right? This was a very unexpected thing, potentially. And I remember, I'm trying to be very delicate about this situation. This is very awkward. It's incredibly heavy. But if this was to happen to you, I'm hoping that this will guide you as you go through. Let me continue. If the person has created a biohazard environment in their passing, involve a remediation contractor. Chances are they have dealt with this type of thing before. This can be understandably traumatic for families who have lost someone that they love and that they lived with. And once the remediation is completed, then do your best to work with the family to empty the unit if there is family involved. Again, if there's not family involved and you need to deem the items in the unit as abandoned, local lawyer, local housing nonprofit society, local sheriff, RCMP, insurance agent. There might be a local landlord society that you are a part of, or maybe a landlord Facebook group that you are a part of. That is where I am seeing these scenarios pop up more and more, is on Facebook, is all the landlord groups that I'm on Facebook, which is what led me to do this podcast. This is happening a lot more often, sadly. Okay, so then as a landlord, after all this happens, because this is heavy and this is happening in your unit, you need to take a minute, have a deep breath, know that this event, you might have to disclose this unit to future owners or future tenants or both, that this person passed away in the unit, that you're aware of it. So what about disclosing to the next tenants or future owners of the unit that someone died there? So the answer is, it depends. It depends on where your rentals are physically located. In certain states, provinces, or territories, You may have to disclose that someone passed away in the unit within some time frame, but how do you know what applies to your rentals? So again, your local lawyer is going to be a very great advisor in this. They will know exactly what is required in your local area on disclosing of someone passing away in your unit. But what about let's see. Ta-da-da. Oh, you can call your local lawyer, but you can also potentially talk to a real estate agent or a real estate brokerage in your area. Very likely, this is something that is on the seller's disclosure when you're going to sell the property. And so the real estate agents in your area may have knowledge about the disclosure details of someone passing away in your unit. They may know, yes, there's certain places, and I'm not going to start saying places, and I'm not going to make an example because it's different everywhere. So you need to do those two things: is talk to your lawyer, talk to a real estate agent, walk into a brokerage and say this happened, jump on your Facebook groups for your local area or your state, province, whatever it may be. Jump into conversations and get some guidance on how you can know the disclosure aspect that someone's passed away in your unit. So this is a very sad yet appropriate topic to all of you listeners out there. Here's what I covered in today's episode. What do you do as the landlord when you haven't heard from someone that's a tenant in some time? What if they haven't paid rent? What do you do if you discover that they've passed away in their unit? What if their passing has created a trauma for the family and either can't or won't return to the unit? And what if the passing has created a biohazard environment? What about the items in the unit? What about their car? What about disclosing to the next tenants or future owners of the unit that died there? Actually, I don't think I covered the car. When you're talking about the car, you can still ask the same bank of people, whether it's your lawyer, the local nonprofit organization, RCMP, sheriff, your insurance agent. Somebody in those advisors will be able to tell you what to do about this person's vehicle, especially if there's no other family involved or you're not aware of their estate. This is where you need to get some guidance on what to do with their car. You can also potentially call an auto wrecker. They will very likely have some guidance on what you need to do or where you need to go, who you need to call. But disclosing a tenant's passing in the unit to the next tenants or future owners of that unit, it is completely dependent on your local area. And again, this podcast is really heavy, and I really took several weeks leading up to today to recording this because it is so heavy. And I'm seeing more and more landlords have this situation happen to them. And I've seen several of them where they end up with big insurance bills because there was a trauma in the unit. And sometimes the insurance doesn't cover, sometimes it does. This is a tough scenario because it's very emotional and can very much be a financial scenario as well. Very tough, very tough. And I recommend that you come back to this podcast if and only if you have this happen to you. Know that it's here. Know that it's in the podcast library waiting for you. Know that if you know of somebody that's a landlord or another owner that this has happened to, that you can send this podcast to them. This is your call to action today. I hope you don't ever have to listen to this podcast ever again. I don't want this to happen to you. But if it does, know that there is some guidance in here. Okay. I'll give you my standard departure, all my podcast listeners. I may have forgotten some different aspects to this. So let me know your comments and your questions. Email me, learn@mylifeasalandlord.com. And if you think that there's a good guest that needs to be on the podcast, you can also shoot me an email. Please don't forget to check out the website, mylifeasalandlord.com, for more details, more resources, and all kinds of different aspects on all things regarding housing. Thank you very much for listening to me today. I know this was a really big, heavy topic. Unfortunately, I think we're going to see this scenario play out a lot more in the future. See you next time.